All right, let's do a quick run through of using the jig to set up a car on the hanger chassis. So if you download the basic kit, you'll get the jig and the skid and the mounting magnet mount. So you've got a divorce skid, so a two-piece skid. You've got these magnet mounts, front and rear. And then you've got this piece. So quick trip to Ikea or online, you can get, I think it's a 10 pack for like $2.50. So if you don't nail it the first time around, you got plenty of options, or you can just hang it up and quite literally hang your clothes up. So I've mentioned in a few other videos, the easiest way to cut the hanger is with a pair of loopers. Like if you're gonna go trim your bushes outside, for some reason, those just cut right through it, cut pretty clean. Get it rough to the ends of the jig, then make some marks as to how big it needs to be and try and get a little bit closer. From there, if you've got a belt sander, that's awesome. If not, you can use a little Dremel tool just to get close to these little, so hard to see, that little indent. You're looking to get it to seat down in there so they're consistent. Now, the holes, trying to get to show through in the background. Put some paper behind it. Those holes at the top there, that's the same pattern that is on the magnet mount. So that'll line up exactly, and it'll put the top of the magnet mount at the top of that line. Same thing in the rear. You will, come on, show it. Those holes, those line up with the magnet mount in the rear. So it's relatively easy to, determine I'm going to use the top back, or I'm going to go the second row, or whatever you're going to use. It doesn't really matter. You'll end up adjusting it a little bit here and there. Now you've got a couple of sets up front. Typically your shock is going to be in here somewhere, depending on how far you want to lay the shock over. This set is typically for your upper front links, and I'll show you on this example rig back here in a minute here. And then it's kind of a free-for-all for the skid, upper links, lower links, all that kind of stuff through this section. It's very difficult for me to say, use these, not these. So let's do a for example. So this is the second one I put together after that first build for the thing, for the budget competition. And the first one I did was deadbolt front links and gladiator rear. This one is gladiator front and rear, so it's a little bit different. And then this one uses a Gold Viper facing forward, and the other one had a Goop RC motor facing backwards. So your spacing in this area gets affected by kind of those choices that you make, right? So I initially set it up where the first one was done, and the skid was, man, this lighting is terrible. I need to get some more lights in here. Was on this front hole and then this hole. And this spacing, I believe, is 8 mil on there. Might be 9. I don't know. You can throw a caliper on there and figure that out. But because the links were so much longer and I wanted to put the motor forward, I ended up using the hole that I've drilled for the rear of this skid for the front. So I just slid it back, measured back the same dimension, and I actually left this hole out, or this screw out, till the very end. One of the things you can mess with is figuring out how to set up your front end here so that it's as low as it can get, but you're still missing the motor with the link in there. Probably should have taken these tires off. It's hard to see in there, but this motor is just barely off that top link. And the reason that works is that I was able to pitch this skid down a little bit. So it doesn't follow this line exactly. It pitches down in the back just a touch. You can probably see it a little there. And that's just to give a little bit of space off of that link in there. So typically what you do is you get your magnet mounts set up. I wouldn't, whoa, keep bumping the tripod. I wouldn't worry about the magnets to begin with. I would just get the mounts in there, get those established, get that secured. Then I would move to doing the front mounting point for the skid, just keeping in mind that it's probably going to move. So I wouldn't get too particular about it. I like to start pretty low on the chassis and then move it if I need to. Once you've got those, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 screws in place, the chassis is pretty well sturdy. It's not twisting really at all. And this rear skid can slide on the inside of this chassis. This flares out at the top and the bottom just a little bit. So it slides back and forth. So you can kind of set it in there without having to mount it and slide that back and forth depending on what you want to do with your links. So the next step would be to figure out, okay, I'm going to use this setup. I'm going to use these links. I'm going to mount obviously the lower ones to these skids. The upper ones, I got to figure out where I want that to be. And with this thing, it's a choose your own adventure, right? It is just figuring it out as you go. So I didn't make too many changes here. I mounted everything to the axles and then just kind of played around with, okay, if I have the skid there, where does this link need to attach, and how would I get it there? Can I push it up or down, and what does that do when the shock cycles and all that kind of stuff? So it's a game of just kind of figuring out what's going to work. This one also, I've done outboard links again. I do like those on this because it does offer a ton of stability side to side. So another thing, you got to kind of figure out where the bends can be to miss that, how much standoff you need to have. But typically get the links all mounted to the axle, put the uppers to, or the lowers to the skid, push it in there, just kind of play around with what wheelbase do I want this to sit at. So with the deadbolt front, Gladiator rear, the first truck was 155-ish, in that ballpark. I never did measure it. It's in that ballpark. This one is Gladiator on both, but it's using that divorced skid. So everything's been pushed back, and I think this is at like 165, maybe a touch longer. It's super handy if you can download and print the jig to know what your wheelbase is, right? You don't have to use this, but it is kind of nice to establish, make sure that everything is square. What is this? So this one's probably more closer to 170 actually. So you can get a fairly long setup using this build, and just playing with that skid. And it's not using a carrier bearing here. It's using a ramp crab sells these little extensions for your drive lines. They're probably, I don't know, 20 mil long, something like that. So you can see it in there. But just that one thing with the Gladiator rear drive shaft is enough to get you out to 170 with ease, right? Obviously, I'd be careful about how you set up your links and how close they get to the drive line and all that kind of stuff. But it isn't really hanging below a double bent link. These were all straight links. I just bent them. It's not hanging below, so, and it sits fairly low. I haven't done a lot of testing with it, so I don't know if it drives worth a damn, but it's fresh off the build, right? So that's a whole lot of work to figure out where those links are going to sit, what angle you want your transmission to sit at, parting things in and out. This is the first time I've used these axles, just wanted to do something different. Have no opinion about them yet, haven't really run them. Once you're to that point, get your shocks mounted and start playing around with how do I get this chassis to sit flat? And that has everything to do with the shock angle, right? The more you crank this up or lay this over, the further that is going to sink down, and the flatter this angle is going to be on your final setup. So I aim to get that flat, and that's the other piece with the jig, is that you do have this bridge piece. Get this set up and I'll drag it in here. You do have this bridge piece on here, so you can set this up flat, put the rig in there with the tires off, obviously, and get it so that, okay, it's going to sit flat if I pitch the shocks over to this angle. So if you've got the magnets placed in here and the magnets on the body, it'll hold it in that position flat across the top, and you can move the shock over to meet wherever that is sitting, and just use a pin vise and drill straight through the shock and put it right where it needs to be. So there's no pulling it back off and putting it back on the jig. It's just a matter of saying, okay, I want this at X height with it fully compressed. That's where it's going to sit. So those are the basics about getting this setup rolling. I'm super interested to see what others come up with. Super short builds, real long builds. It's pretty bomber. It's pretty stiff. It's just fun to mess around with something that is just a blank slate. So there you go. There's the basics to getting started with the hanger jig and the hanger chassis.